This is Chuan Hongchan. Watch the dive.
I think she's
She
done it.
matches the Olympic record. Oh my!
This was the diving champ of China, and this is perfection. This is exactly the kind of athlete that the CCP loves to show the world because Chinese diving isn't just a sport, it's propaganda. Gold medals become proof of national strength, and young athletes become symbols of discipline, sacrifice, and system superiority. At 14, Chuan Hongchan delivered that image perfectly. The Tokyo Olympics 2021, perfect scores, global headlines. She wasn't just a champion, she was literally being used as a political asset because that's how the CCP functions. By 19, she had 3 Olympic gold medals. On paper, she would be everything that the system should protect, but that's not what's happening today.
就攻击我一个人就还好，就是尽量不要攻击我，家里面人啊，然后还有我身边朋友之类的。
She is the equivalent of Simone Biles of China, the Eileen Gu of summer. All that came crashing down this month when she spoke up during an interview about facing bullying online. Not just her family, her friends, her relatives. So how did a national champion that had Chinese people or fans praise her at her height now face bullying so hard that her family members even tried to jump from the roof of their home? Well, Chuan, like many athletes from China in gymnastics, weightlifting, or diving, actually comes from a relatively poor family or from the countryside where they don't really see a future, so they go into one of these sports in hopes to make a living, get a salary, and potentially much better than what they could do in a factory. And even though she came from a poor rural village, she climbed through the ranks purely based on her hard work and performance. Now, that doesn't just make you successful, it makes you dangerous to some people. Now, dangerous to her fellow teammates who were jealous of her abilities, dangerous to fellow coaches who were jealous of that coaches having her, or even jealous to certain broadcasters and media personnel in China. Now, based on the official investigation, the source of this jealousy culminated into a chat group that was started by supposedly a fan or anti-fan, and the group is called Water Splash Conquerors Alliance. Members of this chat group included industry professionals, coaches, fellow teammates of Chuan Hongchan, and even state media sports reporters. And they posted many jealous, derogatory, and outright hateful messages about Chuan Hongchan. One of the messages here simply says, no hateful comments towards other players except for Chuan. Or this one here says, you can't bash anyone except Chuan. So this private WeChat group has around 280 members and is just not some random fan group or fan club that people started, but rather it's people inside the system, right? You had athletes, coaches, people who understood the game. And that's exactly why this thing is so blown out in terms of the shocking factor. Because Chuan represented, at her height of success, what mattered to the regime. And once she fell out of favor, she was no longer useful, and she basically single-handedly, because of her achievement, generated so much jealousy and hatred from people who were also in her profession. Sports in China is very political. It's very emotional driven. It's really not about fair competitiveness. Obviously, there's still individual skills at play. Chuan Hongchan is a great example of that. She's globally recognized for her skills, but it didn't matter because she wasn't in the politics. They didn't just criticize her, they dehumanized her. Words like full mother pig because her last name is full. Literally, the translation would be full. Pig, fat, golden toad, fat pig, ugly red sausage. Nearly 20 nicknames were given to her. They were all targeting her body. What she had done, achievement-wise, not mentioned. It was about her identity, her past, her existence. Now, this wasn't some random online hate, as I mentioned. This is very much organized, sustained, and tolerated for years. It's unclear to us when this started, but likely during the time when Chuan Hongchan was still performing really well. The only person in that group that somewhat tried to defend her was a Macau diver who had to quit the group after seeing these messages, and then she was even called a Chuan's protector deity in a negative way. Now, you see, Chinese sports training is extreme, right? Chuan says in her interview that she got her first period at 17, which is pretty late. Depending on whether or not they use drugs on her to, much like the Russian skaters will be, to maintain that small figure and frame, or if she was just going through so much training, the point is her body just went through those changes, and that resulted in weight gains. As you can see the before and after photo. Now, when she drinks water, she says she even gains weight because of the hormones. And because of that, she's no longer as useful, or she no longer performed at the peak, so she's not as useful. Her protection from winning withered away with it. Because she can no longer dive without a splash, she is no longer considered the paramount diving champion of China. She can't perform as nimble as the little girl she was, or she looked like a few years ago, so she no longer has that protection of the national team. And when you don't have protection, when you don't perform, when you lose your usefulness, there's not something called basic respect for athletes who've done it before. Like when Simone Biles had to withdraw from some of her competitions in 2021 during the Tokyo Olympics, people were mad that she didn't perform, but you still had people who recognized that she's still the best of the best. This is fundamentally not about the athlete themselves. It's about the role of domestic athletes in general in China. What exactly are they? In most cases, the sports which are considered the national sports of China, such as gymnastics, ping pong, diving, badminton, weightlifting, the athletes involved in these sports come basically from a professional trained sense that this is their job. This is 24 hours for them. They train 8 hours a day for the purpose from a very young age to become Olympic medal winners. In other words, they don't spend their life studying for something else that they happen to excel in a sport, then they go on to try out for the Olympics team. These people in China, they literally are raised to become gold medal winning athletes. And so Chuan becoming a champion was the inevitable result of hard work plus excruciating pain that she went through every single day to keep the looks that she had, to maintain the frame that she had, to do the things that she did. But obviously Mother Nature is not going to wait for you forever. So when you're somebody who comes from the countryside, you don't have the power backing, and you basically are no longer at the peak of your game, that's when people can go after you. Now you guys remember the actor Yu Menglong or Alan Yu, right? The reason why his mysterious death is so widely discussed is purely because that he didn't have political backing. He messed with people, or people tried to mess with him that had political backing. And so nobody was there to help him when he needed it the most. Now there's a verdict on this particular case of online bullying. Apparently the official investigation is indicting a fan named Xu for this, but there's nothing else happening, no escalation in terms of who's involved. Because this is honestly nothing but a cover-up, if you really think about it. What about the mean things that were said by people in the chat group? These people were clearly on the inside, right? They were coaches, athletes, they were fellow teammates, they were sports reporters. And these people are not getting touched at all. So the issue here is that the CCP investigation is literally turning this into a simple case of fan culture war, or that fans are bullying her, not the broad general public, which is not the reality of this, because the fan culture war is something that the CCP has long been trying to stamp out. The nature of this case is that the bullying comes from the industry themselves, right? People inside the industry. It's clearly a case of alienation, bullying. It's very much recalling the experience of the political stages of China, where that's exactly what they do elsewhere. So it's jealousy, greed, and just simply cannot tolerate somebody better than them. Now you might be wondering why there's so much jealousy inside the Chinese society today. Well, it's the same reason why people are super materialistic. It's because the communist destruction of people's morals is to turn them into pure greed animals. If you see somebody else more successful than you, the answer isn't to say that, wow, congratulations, let me get you a beer and let me hear what you have to say I can learn from. What they think is that, how dare you make more money than me? How dare you have better cars or a bigger house than me? It's the decades of this type of thinking that really causes people in every industry to not recognize the best as somebody you learn from, but how somebody you can take down so that you can replace them. So the question becomes, what happens if you're not in the right circle? What happens if you're not with the right people, or you don't have the money to buy those backings? And that's where we think about this whole thing as more than just a sports field. It's more than just some fan culture thing. Obviously, there's not going to be any criminal charges or civil investigations further into these people. The official investigation is telling us, okay, that's it. We shut down the group. There's no more. How many more chat groups are out there? How many more chat groups can they create? So this is not something that goes away. And I think it's lucky because Chuan Hongchan won enough influence through her amazing record that it's a little bit tougher to take her down. But you can see it's just her family is also suffering from this, and the others around her are also suffering from this. And so I think the final lesson is not to treat Chinese athletes as people who are like, they're purely this sports athleticism display of skills, but rather they're simply the product of a twisted culture and a twisted society that's built on exploiting them. And so when they're disposed of, become not as useful, they're simply tossed aside. Like an Olympic medal doesn't matter anymore once you've won them. And that's where I think the value really changes when you view, say, for example, what happened to Alyssa Liu versus Chuan Hongchan, right? Alyssa is now attending a bunch of fashion shows, appearing at award shows, and being invited on different talk shows, whereas Chuan Hongchan, once she stops winning, well, she no longer has a future. what's a little girl with a basic, I don't even know if she has a high school education because she spent most of her time training. What's she going to do after this with all the injuries, with all the problems that she might have with her puberty, with hormones and all of those things? So it's really a big question of how people are viewed or how people are valued. And is a champion from China really the same as a champion from other Western countries? I think that's the question for us to all consider. So thank you very much for watching this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and what you think about Chen Hongchan's case. And also subscribe to our new channels, David on China and David Zhang 360 if you haven't already. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.